Oi, fala aí pessoal, bom dia. Você está escutando o Inglês do Rádio. I am your host, Foster Hodge. This is your daily dose of English. I find a lot of the times that when we are talking about languages, we're not specifically talking about English as much as the kind of art or the skill of learning new skills, which in this case just happens to be languages. So you also speak French. You've taught French before. Would you say first, did you learn French after English? That's correct, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Would you say that that process was easier, harder, just different?
I'm not going to say that it's learning French is easier than learning English because that would be completely absurd. I know a lot of people who really find a hard time learning French, and I think it would be very crazy to say that it's easier. I think for me, it was a little easier, but maybe there are some extenuating circumstances. I think that I took a very interesting French course, and I think it helped me a lot. And even if I started learning French when I was 19, and mm, I was, I mean, I it was a better moment for me to start learning a new language. I was able
Yeah.
to study much more. I was able to challenge myself much more than when I was starting learning English when I was like 11 years old, and I didn't know why it was important to me. I mean, my mom was going to say to me that English was the most important language. But for me, it's like something someone told me. It was not something that I really believed in. And
Yeah.
when I was starting learning French, I had already started college, so I knew it was important to me. And I think that I've challenged myself. I made a lot of effort in order to learn French. So I think, and also I think that since French grammar, even if it's very hard, it's much closer to Portuguese grammar than to English grammar. So I think the structure of the language was closer. And I think for me, it was easier to get to a point where I didn't have to think to translate in my head before I was talking. And
Exactly.
and I think that I'm pretty sure that I know much, much, much more English than I know French. In terms of vocabulary, in terms of probably every aspect, I know English much better than I know French.
Right.
But I still think French may be easier for me than English. I think it's more natural. And I don't know. It's whenever I have any difficulty speaking French, it's almost as if I think that okay, maybe I don't know which word to use, but if I made I don't know half the effort that I've already made in English, I would know much more than I know in English. I think
Yeah.
English for me it's not that easy. I think especially the pronunciation process. I think it's much harder than people think. Maybe
Yeah.
because our Brazilian English teachers are not that good and they don't talk about the specifics about the English pronunciation and I think there are many aspects which are different. So
Okay, you said a lot of important things that I kind of want to ask you about. First, I think an important thing with your French to note, because I had a similar experience, that I learned Spanish first and then I learned Portuguese. And if you ask me what is more difficult, Spanish or Portuguese, I would say in my personal experience, it was much, much easier for me to learn Portuguese. But I think two things were happening. Number one, I already had this skill of learning a new
yeah,
language. Like
that's extremely important.
I had already done it before, so I knew I could do it again. And number two, I was older. I was more interested. I was more focused. and I just kind of had this baseline of like, okay, when I have problems communicating, I can do these things. I already had a set of skills, which made it much easier for me to get comfortable faster. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think it makes total sense. People always say that it's easier for you to learn a language when you are young, and of course that's true. But you have to bear in mind the fact that maybe it's easier for you to memorize stuff. It's easier for you to know how to pronounce things. You maybe it's easier for you, but it's important for us not to compare orange and apples, because when you are older, most of the time you are much more focused. Most of the time you have learned a lot of different things. You want it more. So even if it's theoretically easier for you to learn it faster and easier when you are young, I think in a concrete situation, it might be actually easier for you to learn it when you are older, because you make more of an effort, you challenge yourself more, you are much more experienced, you are much more confident. So
Yeah, I pretty much. I mean, I hear this argument all the time. Like, oh, I'm too old to learn English, and it's much easier for kids to learn it. But kids, little kids, I mean, obviously there are certain like developments in the brain that make it easier to memorize things. But if you imagine a young, let's say a 5-year-old kid, and all they have to do is try to speak a language every day. That is their only responsibility,
yeah,
is
for
to
sure.
like eat and cry and try to speak. So I always say, yeah, if you give me, I don't know, let's say a kid is more or less fluent in their native language at like 6 years old. If you give me 6 years to study a language and that's it, I'm pretty sure I can do it better
Yeah,
than
that
than a
was
little kid.
yeah, that was a wonderful example you just gave. Yeah, if everything you do is to talk a different language for 6 years, you are going to learn it. I
For
know that
sure.
you only talk in that language with everyone you know, you are going to learn it. And it's a lot of it's a, that's also a mechanical process that we don't often talk about. In order to learn how to talk a language, you have to spend hours talking it.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know how many hours, but you have to spend a lot of hours, and it's important for you to talk as often as you can. And even if you are alone in the shower, try and talk just a little bit every day, 10 minutes. It doesn't matter. It's going to make all the difference. And I can tell you that because I already had a nice level of English when we started taking those classes. But I think it was much, much harder for me. I used to get stuck all the time, or at least I was feeling stuck all the time. I had to translate most of the things that I was going to say. I thought about grammar all the time. And even though I had it in me, but I didn't have the practice that I needed to express myself freely and fluently. Like you said, the fact that I went from being an advanced student to a really fluent English speaker was precisely due to the fact that I talked a lot and that I've exposed myself a lot. That's a very mechanical process. You cannot skip it. You have to do it in order to learn any language.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are some people that kind of are proponents of the idea of you just need to listen a lot to improve certain things. And that can help in some ways, but I think what you said is really important. Like we talked for hours and hours, and I don't know how many hours. I think it's very important to measure your progress in hours. Like I always ask my students, how many hours of conversation are you doing each week? And usually the answer is 0. So
Yeah,
it's like,
so
okay,
that's
well,
impossible.
that's a good
So
place to
you're
start.
making zero progress.
Yeah. So, um, there's some estimates and stuff. The US government says it takes a Brazilian approximately 600 hours to go from 0 to conversational fluency in English. So I really encourage people to think in hours. Like, how many hours am I spending a day on what am I spending those hours? And then that really starts building up fast.
And actually, it's interesting to think that you have to talk about for 600 hours, because if you talk in English 1 hour every day of the year, you have talked for 365 hours
Yeah.
every day. You don't skip one day. So it's a
Yeah.
lot, man. It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, it takes a lot of effort, but if
I
you really
should
want to do it,
clarify that when I say 600 hours, that's 600 hours of study in general from zero to conversation. But I do
yeah, for
think
sure.
that different types of study give you different types of results. And I think having conversation is a lot more beneficial than like studying a grammar book or something.
Yeah, you were talking about speaking the language, and I think it's extremely important. But I also think it's important not to speed up the process very much. When you are starting a new language, I think sometimes we as teachers we encourage our students to talk a lot when they know nothing, and I think this can be very frustrating for them because it becomes like a new goal that they are simply unable to do, to accomplish. It becomes a task they're unable to accomplish because they don't have it in there. They haven't listened to the language a lot. They haven't read the language a lot. So I think that uh, in order for people to be more comfortable with the learning process, I think at first you have to focus on reading and listening and reading the language, and have to do it a lot. And maybe the conversational aspect should be only about pronunciation and very short phrases, because it can be because I think it can be very frustrating to try and talk about things if you don't know anything, and if you don't know the words, you are going to fail and you are going to feel bad about yourself, even if that's totally not your fault. With little kids, they don't start talking after having listened to a lot of their native language, for years, or I
Yeah.
don't know, for months after they start talking. And when they finally start talking, they are awful at it. They don't know how to talk. And then it's like riding a bike. They fall and they pick up themselves, and then they start again, they're corrected, and then they get better. And I think that sometimes teachers made it harder for students to learn because they demand a lot in terms of talking, and especially writing. Writing should be the last thing you do in any language. It's the last thing you do in your own native language.
Yes, I cannot emphasize this enough. But I think the majority of the difficulties that Brazilians have comes from the fact that they start writing first, and then everything they know about English, and every time they try to speak English, they're just like thinking about the words that they've learned to write. And it just does not work that way at
It
all.
makes no sense, man. It makes no sense because it doesn't matter. You just have, and it doesn't matter if you make some spelling mistakes at first. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you're talking about, where teachers often push students too hard. I think in defense of teachers, you also teach. It is hard when you have a lot of students and you're following a curriculum, but language is a super personal thing. So I think a better way to approach it is not like I should be here at this period in time. Like, students always ask me, how long will it take me to have like a basic conversation? And I don't have an answer for that. That depends on you. But something you can answer is, tomorrow, can I be a little bit better than I was today?
Yeah,
Can I
yeah,
improve
yeah,
just a little bit?
yeah.
And if you just think about kind of incremental improvements, I think that is a much healthier way
I
to
agree,
approach it.
and I agree, and also you have to tell them that they are going to make mistakes, even if they are mastering the process, even if they are mastering the skills, they are going to make mistakes. And this is hard for us to accept, but that's just the truth. Even if you master a skill, at some point, maybe because you're tired, maybe because you didn't think about it, maybe because you're overconfident, you are going to make a mistake. And that's normal. It's like learning how to pronounce a new difficult word. Maybe you have mastered it, but that is not the same as to say that you are never going to mispronounce it again. You probably are going to mispronounce it again, even if it's just for a couple of times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even argue that once you kind of get in the habit of falling down and failing, once you're used to this experience, I think it's a lot easier to do this in a foreign language compared to in your native language. So, for example, I don't know, if you say something really stupid in Portuguese and all of your friends are laughing at you, that will really make you feel like worthless. Like that was something really stupid I said. I should not have said that. But when you're learning another language, I think in general, most people kind of give you a free pass. If
Yeah,
you say
that's
something really stupid, it's like, oh, he's still learning. You know?
yeah, that's a very compelling argument. I think people are much more easygoing when it comes to uh, people studying second language than those who are speaking their native language.
Yeah, I mean, I've really not had many people judge me on my language skills, like in Spanish or Portuguese. Sometimes people will laugh at me, but normally it's just like my friends laughing because I said something silly. Um,
Yeah, but
so I
they're
think the
not
fear of
laughing as if they are criticizing you. They're laughing because they find it amusing. They find it cute.
yeah,
It's
they're
not a
laughing because it was actually funny. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a criticism. That's important. They're not
yeah,
judging you.
yeah. And I think that fear of judgment is what stops a lot of people in their tracks and stops
For
them
sure.
from making progress. And to be honest, I don't think it's really judgment. There's not that much judgment there to be scared of. I think
Yeah.
people are scared of something that really doesn't exist.
First of all, people don't care about you. you have you're not that important. People don't you're not the center of the world. People don't care if you don't speak well, if you don't play a sport well, if you don't dance well. People don't care about you. They care about them. So
Very good point.
if you make a mistake, that's all right then. But I think the odds of you remembering that mistake are much, much greater than the odds of the other person remembering that mistake, much greater. And you have to accept our mistakes, our failures, because
Yeah, yeah. I think the
otherwise
point
it's impossible.
yeah. I think the point you bring up about more or less everyone in the world is a narcissist, and we are always thinking about ourselves,
For sure.
should be a really positive point for language speakers. So when you think that someone is judging every grammatical mistake you make,
No, they're not.
they're probably not. And a very easy way to kind of give you more confidence is just ask other people questions about them. Like, "Oh, what do you do? Oh, where are you from?" And people will talk. People like to talk about themselves. So
That's true.
it's just you have plenty of resources there just with the normal conversation.
Yeah. And I think there are some useful tips that teachers might give to students in order for them to be able to overcome their obstacles. And sometimes it's hard for us to get stuck. And I think it's impossible for us to promise to students or anyone who's learning a new thing, a new skill, that they're not going to feel stuck at some point, especially a new language. I think this is absolutely normal. It happens all of the time in our native language. So, of course, this is going to happen in a foreign language as well. But I think there are some tips you can tell to students which are important, like whenever you don't know which word to use, just change the subject or say rhetorical question like, "Oh, what's the word I'm looking for?" and it sounds as if you're not stuck. And I think this is important, because uh, whenever we get stuck and we show it to people that we just got stuck, we feel so embarrassed. And I think
Exactly.
that to know that, okay, you are going to get stuck, but you can come up with ways that will somehow prevent people from thinking you are stuck. I think this is important for people to feel more confident and to feel that, okay, nothing bad is going to happen to me. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm not going to feel embarrassed. And I think this is also important.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. A tip that I always give my students is if you get stuck or you can't remember a word or you're trying to express a thought that is just too complicated and it's not coming out right, just think about it in a more simple way. So, for example, if you want to say, I don't know, how was the dinner? It was fantastic. And you can't remember the word fantastic, just say, it was really good, but I want to say something. And then someone will be like, great. And you're like, yeah, it was great. It was fabulous. It was fantastic.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you can maintain the conversation without having to find that perfect word and without having to get stuck.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to bear in mind the fact that talking is different than writing. Whenever you're talking with someone, you most of the times you have the time to correct yourself if you don't express yourself in the best way possible. So maybe if people don't understand you, they can ask you, and you can correct yourself. And so if maybe the dinner was fantastic and you want to talk how great it was, and you just don't know the word, and you say, oh, that was very good, and the other person might ask you, but did you really like him, did you really like it? And then you can say, yeah, I loved it. So you don't have to remember the exact word you want to use, you want to employ. And that's different from writing, which is a situation where you cannot correct yourself, where you are not talking with directly with someone, and then you have to find the precise word you want to use it so that people don't get confused. When you are
Yeah,
talking, you have plenty of opportunities to correct yourself, to change the way you have just talked about. So I think this is important for people to feel more relaxed whenever they're talking about anything.
absolutely. The conversation it's always in motion. It's always a back and forth. It's a game. If you say something really stupid, you can say something really smart right after.
Yeah,
You
for
always have
sure.
room to clarify. But if you're writing and you say the dinner was good, it's like, okay,
Okay,
is that
well, that's
the
fine.
best word he had? you know, so you have a lot more freedom to kind of move around, be creative, make mistakes, and get away with it in conversation.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
totally agree.
And
Cool.
when you are talking about anything, it's not a game, you don't have to beat anyone. You just have to express yourself. That's your only goal, to express yourself. It doesn't matter if you make a lot of grammar mistakes. It doesn't matter if you don't use as many words as you can. You just have to express yourself in the way that it reflects your actions and your feelings and everything that you are thinking. So it doesn't matter if you choose the best way possible. You just have to get there. That's the only thing you have to think about.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to put it. So, Ricardo, if you had to, from all your linguistic experience and knowledge, teaching, learning languages, if you had to give people one small tip, just like one useful thing that they could start doing, what would that be? And I know I'm asking you, kind of putting you on the spot, asking for recommendations, but it could be anything, something that's helped you in the past.
First of all, anyone can learn any language as long as they try, as long as they study, as long as they challenge themselves, as long as they really do everything they have in order to learn it. And this does not mean that it's going to be easy, but it truly means that you can get there, and that it's not it's an unending process. You never uh, reach a point where you can say, okay, I cannot learn anything else. No, you can always learn something else. But that does not mean that you cannot enjoy the process, that you cannot be proud of yourself because you have developed your skills, because you have moved along on a very long path. And I think this is probably the most important thing that I can say to anyone who wants to start a new language. Don't give up, because you don't have to. You don't have to be perfect in order to feel yourself, to be understood. You just have to be able to express yourself, and anyone can express themselves in any language as long as they try, as long as they have all that practice that we've talked about during this podcast. And I think if anyone knows that, the odds of them becoming more relaxed when they talk, and the odds of them becoming more confident as long as they study and they move on and they learn new things, they develop their skills, I think the odds get much, much greater. And I think that as long as people realize that they are getting better, then nothing is going to prevent them from achieving their goals, unless, of course, they have a very stupid goal like, I want to talk exactly like a native speaker. I mean, this is not going to happen probably because you're not going to talk as much as a native speaker. So I have a friend, for instance, who plays the guitar, and he's really good. He's amazing. And I tell him every time I meet him, I tell him that, and he just doesn't believe it. And he always has the same answer. He says, "Oh, but I know many. I know a few. I know someone who plays better than me." And yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, that's going to happen. You're not going to be the best. No one is the best, except
Yeah.
for one person in the world. So if you have stupid goals, then of course you're not going to be able to make it. But if your only goal is to be able to express yourself, which is the key aspect of any language, then I can guarantee you are going to make it.
I think that is awesome advice. That's very inspiring. And as someone that also plays guitar and also I'm constantly comparing myself to people that play better than me.
Yeah,
I
it
think that's a
exists then.
great
And
point is you're not trying to be world class here. You're just trying to express yourself. So
yeah,
stop
yeah,
comparing yourself.
and that's very interesting. Every time we talk about learning process, and for some weird reason we talk about that a lot. It's funny how this applies to many situations in our lives. So any learning process, not only language, any uh, I don't know, relationships. I think this it serves all purposes. You have to be confident, and you have to be more realistic, and you have to enjoy the process and not think about some results which might never come because they are not real.
Yes. Yeah. I think it is much less about the specific language and much more about the process of learning how to learn. And that kind of meta skill of learning how to learn applies to everything in your life. It will make you better at sports, languages, relationships, whatever you want. Just the act of failing and gradually getting better.
Yeah,
I think that's key.
that's why I said it takes courage to learn anything, because it does. It's hard. You are going to expose yourself. You are going to get out of your comfort zone, but it's really worth it once you realize you are getting better. You are accomplishing everything you've designed, everything you thought about doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great phrase, Ricardo. It takes courage to learn anything. I think that's a good place to end. You are very courageous to come on the podcast and
Thank you, man.
very gracious with your time. I'm very grateful. Um, cool. Any parting words you want to leave our audience with? Any, I don't know. Normally, when I talk to someone like a guest, they have like a website that they want to send people to. I don't think you have that.
No,
Um,
I don't have a website, but I do encourage each and every one of your students to keep doing the classes with you because I think you're a very nice teacher and I think you are a very inspirational guy to anyone who wants to learn a new language. As you said, you already speak Spanish and Portuguese. You have lived in different countries. You moved to Brazil, which is a very different country from someone who comes from the southern states. So I think this is, yeah, I think this is a wonderful example for anyone that getting out of your comfort zone is necessary for you to learn anything. And I really think that your students are going to benefit from the classes if they follow your advices and if they keep doing the classes with you.
yeah. So we have to end on one small correction. If they follow your advice, it sounds a
Okay.
little strange to say your advices.
I didn't know that.
It took me 1 hour to get one correction from you.
And I learned a new thing.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I got to run, but really appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, man. See ya.